Hi everyone, welcome to Mr. D Miniatures. Today we are going to learn how to do some Rohan houses for just a couple of euros every house. Something really cheap. So let's start with this tutorial. First of all, we are going to need some rests of plywood. Normally I use 3mm plywood that it can be easily found in the groceries. There are many plywood boxes that you can find in the groceries that they usually are used to bring some vegetables, so you can ask for them because they just throw them away after using them. Also, we are going to use some modeling sticks that they can be easily found in many hobby shops. And we are going also to use some very thin cardboard. We can use the cardboard of some boxes that we have at home, like these chips or pizzas or whatever we have. And also we are going to use some putty. I normally use air dry dash putty, but sometimes I don't find the dash putty, so these Jovi or Carioca brand marks are also useful, and they are very cheap. It costs like 2 euros, and we have a lot of it. So let's start. Firstly, we have to start cutting the plywood. As I told you, it is 3mm plywood. It's good to use a miniature as a reference for the measures of the house that you are going to do. For example, the length I am going to use for the walls is around 9 centimeters, and the height is going to be 4 centimeters. But you don't have to worry, it more or less can be that numbers. It can be 3.5 or 4.2 or something like that, because we are going to do some like medieval houses, so they are not very regular. You have to imagine that every person, every family was doing the house with the materials they had at hand, and they were not following like very structured plans. So if you go to these tiny little very old towns, you are going to see that many houses have different measures. The size of the houses can vary a lot, and the height of the walls also. So, okay, after cutting the walls, as you can see, by the way, I'm using a security blade. It's enough. For 3mm plywood is enough. After cutting the walls, I am also cutting 2 other pieces for the roof, because later it's necessary for supporting all the pressure that we are going to do when applying the putty. Here I am sticking it with PVA glue, so after this we let it dry for like half an hour, can be enough. Then we are going to cut some cardboard strips. The width I use is half a centimeter, and the longitude, the length, don't matter, because we are going to use as much as we can. This is going to simulate the wood of the walls, because as you remember, Rohan houses were built of wood. So we apply some PVA glue on the lateral of the house, and we start gluing all these strips. You don't need to measure it and adjust it, because as you can see, we are cutting it after it, and we are reusing the same strips. So after this, we are going to repeat all the process all along the laterals of the house. It's like a long job, but it's very easy because we are cutting all the strips all the time, like you can see, and we have to order and modify a little bit some of the strips because they disorder and they move when we are cutting them. So we continue also in the laterals. We are going to glue the other lateral, and we cut it with an angle because this is representing the roof. So after this is completely done, but we have to apply some strips more, because on the laterals we have to put some horizontal strips that they are pinning up the vertical strips. So after this we get some of the hobby sticks, and we are going to cut some strips. We need here real wood because we need that it's more thick than the normal cardboard, because this is going to represent the thick tree trunks that they are in the corners. So it should be much thicker than the other, because it has to be with some relief in comparison with the normal planks that they are in the laterals of the house. So we cover the 4 corners of the house with these sticks. We carefully cut it, we have to adjust it. As you can see, the house now it starts to have like the typical appeal of the Rohan houses. Okay, we continue, we apply the PVA with, okay, this is something much better now. Once it's dry, we have here a miniature to compare it. We are going to start doing the typical horses that they are having on the beams. As you can see, we draw and we cut one. Okay, and then we are going to use that one once we are sure that it's going to be perfect. We are going to use it as a pattern, and then we draw it 3 more times because we need 4 of them, and we carefully cut them. As you can see, I try to use as much of the material I have. I copy it one next to the others, so I take all the material and I don't waste anything. Once it's done, we are going to glue it. It's very simple. As you can see here, we have 2 horses, and then we are going to have the other 2 horses. And then this is much more like a Rohan house. And then we are going to cut the door. With the miniature that we have next to us, we cut the measures of the door, and then with very thin strips of cardboard, we are going to simulate the planks of the door, and then we glue it. Okay, we cut the leftover because we don't need to be very exact. And then with another thick piece of wood, we are going to put the beam that is over the door. Then we are going also to do a window. We just cut some little strips also that they are going to simulate the shutters, and a little square that is going to be the window. We glue these strips simulating the shutters. It's very simple. As I told you, it's not necessary that this is something completely exact. We are talking about fantasy medieval houses, so the woods can be, or the planks can be a little bit crooked. Don't worry about that. So after gluing the windows, we are going to start with the straw roof. So we open the modeling clay and we apply it on the roof. This is going to simulate the straw. Firstly, we just need to cover it very well with a thick layer. So you have to imagine that it's simulating the straw, as I told you. So it must be thick, because these medieval straw layers are very thick. Once we make the general shape, as you can see, it's thicker also on the laterals. It must be generous. It's good that it's thick. And then firstly, we have to close it very well, because otherwise it's going to be dry. And before it's dry, when it's still wet, we are going to use the security blade to make a thousand of vertical, very thin, like cuttings, because this is going to simulate the texture of the straw. As you can see, this is an easy way of making this straw. This is not like the best way ever, obviously. This is not something that it can be used for a very accurate modeling dioramas. But for wargaming, you are going to get a very cool, cheap and easy straw roof. Much easier than using like teddy bears fur. Once it's dry, we are going to apply a PVA layer mixed with water to protect it from scratches, because this is kind of not delicate, but it can be scratched very easily if it hits with another element. So we apply this layer to protect the texture, and we avoid that it scratches a lot, and then we let it dry. Once it's dry and prime, we start painting it. We start using a very deep and dark brown color as a first layer, because this is going to simulate the deepest parts of the straw. So we apply it generously, and after painting it, we let it dry. And then we start painting the laterals. It's good that you use a different color, lighter, so we make some contrast. Here I am painting the laterals, these planks with Vallejo color, US Field Drive, I think that is the color I use. And I am painting all the planks. As you can see, it's kind of easy. It's a very slow job because you have to paint a lot and be kind of exact. And after painting the general layer or the basic layer, we start highlighting to simulate the wood grain. I just mix the same color with a little bit of white color and start making some vertical lines, as I told you, to simulate the wood grain. This is very simple, but this is a painting job that is very slow. You need to employ like a lot of time here. You know that painting terrain and scenery, decorative buildings is very, very slow. And I finally use a second highlighting just with smaller brushes. And don't forget the horses. And we are going to paint now the straw of the roof. With a dry brush technique, we use a lighter color, so we start seeing more relief on the top of it. And then another highlighting of another lighter color, so the straw start having a much cool color. I think that it's good to use different browns. So we have some like bitonality that is cool for our eyes. It creates a good eye candy effect. For example, here my brown is much different than the general brown used for the main planks of the house. And then in the door, I also use the same color, but as you can see, it's very different. It's a cool brown. And then after coloring it, we apply also a highlighting, and the house start having like a cool shape and a cool color. And as you can see, this is the finished house. This is basically what we have done. And the house, it has an impressive appeal. It was very simple. It just needed some time, but it was very cheap. And here we can see all the different buildings that we can do following this technique. You just need to vary the shapes, but the technique is exactly the same. The same technique for the roof, the same techniques for the planks. You can make bigger or smaller houses. For example, I built a huge barn here that it can be used like a main building or even a palace. And all the houses have the same technique. It creates a cool effect on the battlefield, and it's very, very cheap. Less than €2 each. I think that like one or something like that. Very, very cheap. I even didn't use all the clay for this, and the other materials were more or less free. So I really recommend you to build it, and I hope that you liked it. If you really like it, I recommend you to subscribe and press like, or even comment if you have any questions. Thank you very much. See you soon.